Um, I didn't want to leave some things unsaid for today because I'll lose them. And given the event horizon timeline that we're experiencing right now, what is a timeline? It's a series of events. So if I explain my timeline, then I would explain the events that I'm experiencing them as I'm experiencing them. Okay, just like I'm doing right now. I'm sharing with you what I'm experiencing right now by communicating what I'm experiencing. So one of the things that I think about from time to time, particularly now that is very relevant, is not just the speed at which the streams of what I'm aware of are changing at an accelerated rate of speed, but I thought a couple of things that are extremely important because of what we're experiencing right now, okay? Deals with, and I'm being distracted naturally by a yellow jacket. And that deals with sexual perversion, because all this is coming out, right? And then what we consider to be sort of what I mentioned earlier about the natural order of things. And then how the nature of control over what we experience comes through from others to us, and how the nature of what we call obedience training to a higher authority, but it's perceived as a higher authority as if we're supposed to obey the master, as if the master is the authority of how we're going to experience who we are, that is not in alignment with the natural order of how life unfolds with love, okay, in living spirit. So, for example, the birds and the bees, okay? Now, this obviously is not going to be the same for everybody, because there is a lot more than just a Homo sentient sapien that is out there in the cosmos that experience how they reproduce, okay? Versus how a Homo sentient sapien reproduces. The natural order in which a particular species reproduces itself. Just like when you see a lizard in the wild, for example, and the egg hatches, a lizard pops out, and you want to examine what the lizard does, then go observe it, take notes, or just record it in your Akashic record. Okay, now you're aware of how a lizard perceives the world in which it lives, and you observe what it does with its energy, and what is it doing? Whack-a-mole. Okay, so you have whack-a-moles and then energy service providers. So what we do is we measure, everything is a measurement, loss and gain of energy between whack-a-moles and energy service providers. So that's why when I was a child growing up, I realized the hawk population's going up. That means the snake population's going down. We can measure the balance between the up and the rise and between the species, okay? Because certain species use the energy that is represented by other species, okay, that become food for them, and then you have them that are food for others, okay? So you have a relationship between energy givers and energy consumers. In biology, they call that trophic levels, okay? Professionally, at least in terms of some of the coursework that I did down here, was an ecologist. Environmental engineering, social ecology, behavioral sciences, which is learning, which is programming. But you can break all that down into a much larger construct in terms of all of the different terms and labels and definitions, or the perceptions through which how we put all that together, how learning has taken place, and what does learning mean to us, okay? As energy learning. Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to cover a few things real quick. One is called live streaming. There's like different speeds at which we're experiencing, which is the processing of the information that we become aware of. If you want to call it data, it is data, okay? So, for example, I'm aware of what others are aware of what they are experiencing on this planet, and that actually includes everything that's in nature. I'm aware of right now in my own mind what a bird is experiencing, and I can describe that to you. I can write it down, or I can explain it to you verbally. I'm very aware of all the birds that are here around me and exactly what they're doing while they're doing it and why they're doing it, actually. Okay? So I could write about that. I could write an entire book about that, okay, and put it into a library. And then somebody would experience through reading what is in that book what I experienced of what I was aware of, how birds and bees and everything else experience who they are to perform a function here. Okay? When you think of everything as function-driven, okay? So you have functionality of all these different species. There's a reason why bees do what they do. A hive mind. Okay? They perform a valuable function, don't they? They pollinate flowers. And there's a reason why they do that, isn't there? Okay? Seeding the flower. Okay? Just like a male seeds the flower of a girl. Okay? So with me, I simply respond to the natural order of things within me. So, for example, the first time that I made love to a girl, or I felt the input, or if you will, the intuitive. I'm operating off of information, which means my sexual reproductive energy, which is a biological function, isn't it? Okay, to reproduce is a biological function. The function for that is to reproduce. Another one of what you are, which is based on the data that is in what? The male seed. So I was on a bus one day, and I got off the bus, and this was in Orinda, California, because I remember the girl. Her name was, what was it? Marsha Lorch, as a matter of fact. She was a beautiful spirit. I loved that girl, and she loved to be with me. We were close friends, and she was, I think, about a year and a half older than me, and I was in the third or fourth grade. I was 8 years old. And one day we got off the bus, and the next thing you know is we're making love to each other. Okay? It was just the natural order of things. My parents never told me about the birds and the bees and the flowers. This was nature. We were following the instinct or the prompt to do these things together. Okay? That's how nature works. So what is a perversion of nature? Okay? That's a control function. That's why as a child when I grew up and I'm looking through all my father's engineering manuals and what they do with knowledge and how they want to control what? Nature. They're always fucking with nature. They can't just walk into nature and allow nature for the natural order in which nature is taking place to unfold. Create new life. Be in a state of love and joy. There is a natural order to the cosmos in which life unfolds with love. Love does no harm. Okay? So when you are that, and you're experiencing that, and who you are, then you naturally do the things that come natural to you. And that's what we do. We do what comes natural. We live in nature. That's why the Indians, and I'm an Indian, live in nature. Now I realize this is a qualifier because I can't speak for all other Indians. I can only speak for the Indian, which is the avatar that I'm in, which is based on the DNA assembly that Gaia put together in her mother's lab in Eden. So that when my soul could jump into this thing, which is my living spirit, and the energy that I use to be who I am, to experience in this communication platform, the natural order of things. So when I'm with her and I'm living in nature, that's easy. So you begin to realize that, well, I'm getting different messages of communications that are coming from who? Books and publications and classrooms and mass media on how it is I'm supposed to live my life according to who? Them. Well, that's not what nature is, because I live in nature and I am what nature is in living spirit. I live by a different rule book. I live by a different set of rules. The rules I live by, which is nature, runs on one law, which is what love is. The rest is easy. So now you have all these other rule-driven functions based on all their, what is it, Anna von Wright said yesterday, 80 million rules? That's nuts. That's insanity. That's a prison. You're not able to be free in nature, running on one law. Now you're free to go do and express yourself however you want and no fear, because love is the absence of fear when you're in nature. When you are with a girl on the planet experiencing everything in nature, okay, it's not the same thing, is it? When all of a sudden you come into a town or a city, now you're being exposed to everything that is rule-driven. That's the difference. They wanted to disconnect everybody from her to live in nature according to a first law, which is what love is, to now go live and plug into something that is rule-driven. All these rules. And if you don't abide by the rules, you got to pay the master. And that master is a programmer. Because as a child going to their schools, which is programming, we're programming all of our children to live by 80 million rules. That's not freedom. That's a prison. Now we're being held slave to rule functions by a programmer that says obey the program. Obey the function of the program. Welcome to artificial intelligence. Because that's what it is. Okay? So when people begin to realize and wake up to decide what it is and who we are, becomes an identity function. Who are you? Who am I? What is it that gives us the greatest joy, the greatest happiness, the greatest amount of peace, the greatest amount of harmony, and the greatest amount of balance? So that our boat is not being rocked and our energy is not being molested by rules. Okay? Those that enforce the rules. That is designed to live in a prison in which your energy is not liberated. That's a lower state of consciousness. Those that enforce the rules enforce the prison. That's why when I was a child, I called them the gatekeepers. They're not real gatekeepers. Not on this planet. So what is it that they do is they're enforcing a lower state of consciousness so that you can't expand the amount of light that you are spinning in a vortex to free ourselves from the prison that we choose to live in. Because we live by the choices that we make based on the experiences that we're choosing to experience on Event Horizon. And that's called a timeline. That's why there are timeline wars. So the light has to be ahead of the game, or we lose to the dark. We lose to the prison. We lose to the jailers of our consciousness. So liberating your light is liberating your state of consciousness from living in a rule-driven function prison to be able to experience the freedom of who you really are, to express yourself, where you're not going to be molested, where your energy is free to express itself. That's the First Amendment. That's the Declaration of Independence. That's the message that Donald Trump is trying to convey to everybody in America. So I don't want to get into right now, although I might do it at a later time, the whole purpose and meaning of QAnon, with the purpose of using the word patriot, why we wrap in a flag. It's called a common theme, common things, which means not presenting more conflict or argument, but uniting more people in the belief that we can live in a state of freedom, self-governance, self-rule, the original intent, if you will, of what it means to be independent, which means able to live your own life, Okay? Be the author of your own journey. Where somebody's not trying to control you or me and saying, no, you got to live according to my rules. Well, you might as well cut your head off and put its head on your head, because now you're living according to their function, which is control. And that's not freedom. So I'll leave you all to think about that for the day, because these are important changes that are accelerating at a very high rate of speed to end the jailers of our energy.